The moon in astrology is deeply tied to our emotional landscape, our inner world, our instincts, and how we respond to life's ups and downs. It represents the unconscious, our deepest feelings, and how we nurture ourselves and others. At its core, the moon is about emotional security, where we feel safe and where we find comfort. It reflects our moods, our instincts, and the way that we process and respond to emotional stimuli. Just as the moon pulls the tides, it pulls at the emotional currents within us, often without our awareness. In terms of family, the moon is often seen as a symbol of the mother and the maternal energy in a person's life. It reflects the nature of our early emotional conditioning and how we were nurtured as children. This doesn't necessarily mean it's a direct mirror of the biological mother, but more so the emotional dynamic that shaped us within the family unit, particularly in relation to how we were cared for, protected, and supported. The sign in the house placement of the moon can reveal a lot about how we experienced maternal love and care, how we emotionally relate to our family, and how we express nurturing qualities in our relationships. The family dynamic, especially with the mother, can leave deep emotional imprints. Ultimately, the moon is about comfort and emotional bonds. Understanding the moon in a chart gives insight into how we emotionally connect with others and how we navigate the ties that bind us, particularly those that began in the family setting. It also speaks to the core of how we nurture ourselves, whether by seeking safety in solitude, the comfort of familiar places, or the deep emotional connection that we have with our loved ones. Now, in mythology, Jupiter, known as Zeus in the Greek myth, he was the king of the gods, the ruler of the heavens, and the god of thunder and lightning. He sat atop Mount Olympus, wielding immense power and domination over all other gods, as well as humankind. His presence in the mythos was one of expansion and authority and the law, but also of deep contradictions. He was both a benefactor and also a disruptor. His relationships were filled with both divine favor and scandal, as he could be generous and he can also be reckless, offering blessings or inciting chaos within. Jupiter's myth is often tied to growth in astrology, wisdom, and the pursuit of higher truth. He is the force behind the expansion of knowledge, culture, and personal philosophy. His realm is that of the grand vision, the impulse to seek out what lies beyond our immediate sight, to chase after distant dreams, and to pursue truth in a way that can both uplift, but also at times overwhelm. He is the God that blesses abundance, but he asks us to embrace the unknown. And in doing so, he tests our ability to expand beyond our limits. In astrology, Jupiter retains the same qualities, serving as the planet of growth, abundance, and expansion. Jupiter's placement in a natal chart often reveals where we seek meaning, purpose, and opportunity. Just as Jupiter in mythology emboldened the mortals to explore the realms beyond their understanding, in astrology, Jupiter directs us towards where we might feel driven to push the boundaries of our experience, whether through travel or intellectual pursuits such as higher learning, spirituality, or the exploration of new ideas. However, like Jupiter's mythological counterpart, his astrological influence isn't always gentle. Jupiter's blessings come with their own set of risks. In mythology, Jupiter's generosity often led to hubris. Humans or gods alike were sometimes humbled by their own arrogance after receiving Jupiter's gifts. Similarly, Jupiter in astrology can really push us towards excess, too much expansion, too much optimism, and too much risk. In a chart, this can manifest as overconfidence or excessiveness, or even neglecting to understand the balance between growth and restraint. Much like the god himself, Jupiter teaches us that expansion, while vital, must be tempered with wisdom. The myth of Jupiter, with his grand gestures and unchecked desires, echoes the way that we interpret his astrological influence. He shows us that the limits of our ambition, and he invites us to examine how we pursue and what we seek, whether it is truth or adventure or success. Just as Jupiter was both generous and morally ambiguous, Jupiter in astrology calls us to question where we might be seeking more than we can handle, or where we might be holding ourselves back from the growth that we crave. So, when we see the moon in an opposition to Jupiter in a natal chart, the native will be attracted to relationships with women outside of their given faith or their family of origin or background. They are looking for somebody who is growth-oriented and worth impressing. Whether this is just the women in their lives that they are platonically intimate with, or these people will crave relationships that are very different from the way in which they grew up. They are learning to grow through their relationships, and they are very excited by people who are pushing them to get out of their comfort zone. They love partners that are culturally and politically aware and that push them into growing as a person, as well as building something of worth together. They may choose to marry for reasons other than love, for expansion, for growth, for getting the heck out of Dodge. But these people can be very generous with their resources, and they love to show affection in big or extravagant ways. On the high octave, these people can be very philanthropic, and on the low octave, they can be total love bombers. These are the people that can be highly judgmental of others and are always aware of how other people are perceiving them. Often, as a child, they might have had very exaggerated emotions. There could have been, for example, a helicopter parent or a mother who could be a bit smothering. So in relationships, they care a lot about how others see them, and they like their personal freedom. They want to have a prize on their arm, and they wouldn't be caught dead with anything less. Their energy can feel restless at times, and they can have a hard time really knowing what they want out of life. Often there is a mother who is super indulgent, and so they learn to equate their emotional happiness with outward circumstances. They tend to deal with their emotional waves through humor as well. They may use humor, for example, to deflect from their emotions. Others can find their actions intense or more dramatic than expected. So there's a tendency to make mountains out of molehills, leading to emotional highs and lows that feel larger than life. People with this aspect may also struggle with balancing their emotional needs with their thirst for freedom and expansion. They could overestimate their ability to handle emotions, leading to periods of emotional burnout or dissatisfaction. In relationships, there may be a push-pull dynamic where the individual craves emotional depth and connection, but also seeks freedom or excess. They may be prone to grand gestures or exaggerated displays of affection, which can actually overwhelm others who don't respond in kind. Finding balance between nurturing emotional needs and resisting the urge to overdo things is key for those with the moon opposite Jupiter. To their family, they may appear to be drama queens. In the early part of life, their emotions can be quite over the top. Think about Kim Kardashian and the ugly cry. She is famous for having a moon opposed Jupiter in her chart. Their family may also use humor to take the stress away from their big emotional landscapes. These natives desire the freedom in relationships to do as they please, but they might not give the same respect to their partners. They can also struggle with jealousy and a wandering eye at times. People with the moon opposite Jupiter tend to feel emotions in widescreen. There's no small reaction here. Joy bursts at the seams, and sorrow drowns the world. Excitement bubbles into full body enthusiasm. Their emotional world is vast. It is uncontainable and deeply intertwined with their personal philosophy, family dynamics, and their sense of faith in life. This aspect creates an inner push and pull between the emotional security and the expansion of the native. So it often leaves them in a state of wanting more love, more adventure, and more meaning. This aspect brings a natural generosity, and these people often radiate warmth and a desire to uplift others, whether it is through their humor or storytelling or simply their infectious enthusiasm. They believe in the possibility and rarely see the point in holding back their emotions. These natives love deeply, care loudly, and are unafraid to show it, sometimes to a degree that can overwhelm others. They give freely, sometimes to a fault. They want to shower their loved ones with affection and attention and grand gestures, believing that love should feel expansive and limitless. However, they may struggle with boundaries, assuming that if they just give enough, that everything will work out. So their emotional expressiveness can be incredibly endearing, but also a source of struggle. They may talk about their feelings in a very exaggerated way, unintentionally turning minor issues into sweeping narratives. Their enthusiasm can make them natural storytellers, but it can also lead them to embellish their experiences or inflate emotions beyond what they actually feel in the moment. They may also have difficulty handling emotional moderation, either fully investing in someone or feeling completely disconnected. Either way, these natives tend to have a way with words. They can be quite poetic and incredible writers and storytellers. These natives tend to have a way with words, which can make them excellent writers, storytellers, or public speakers. They can be incredibly motivating, and they love to capture the purpose of everyday, mundane interactions. Generally, there's a real thirst for travel here as well. There is a real sense of wanderlust here. This aspect can make someone deeply sentimental about the places that they've been, yet always yearning for what lies beyond the horizon. They might oscillate between feelings of deep emotional security in familiar places and an overwhelming urge to uproot their lives in pursuit of something bigger. This wanderlust isn't random, it tends to be inherited. Many people with the moon opposite Jupiter come from well-traveled families. This aspect doesn't just indicate a love for travel, it also points to a strong emotional connection with higher learning as well. With the moon representing the inner needs and Jupiter ruling wisdom and expansion, these individuals often prioritize university-level education or other forms of intellectual exploration. There's an emotional fulfillment tied to broadening the mind, whether through formal academia, philosophy, or self-directed studies. They might feel most at home in an environment that encourages growth, debate, and exposure to different worldviews. Growing up in a well-traveled family, they might have likely absorbed stories of distant places, cultures, and philosophies from an early age. Education and travel are often intertwined in their lives as they see knowledge as something to be experienced rather than just studied in a classroom. They might be drawn to studying abroad or pursuing degrees in global studies, philosophies, or languages, simply by structuring their lives in a way that allows for both intellectual and physical exploration. Even if they don't follow a traditional academic path, they are lifelong learners, always seeking meaning through travel, books, and direct experiences of the world around them. Luigi Maggioni is one example of how this aspect manifests in real life. His mother ran a travel business, a literal expression of the moon and Jupiter, and his big emotional displays are a classic marker of this placement, whether it's enthusiasm, righteous indignation, or frustration, or joy. It all comes out in a way that is impossible to miss. Maggioni was Ivy League educated and was unafraid to put himself on a cross for a cause. Charlie Sheen, on the other hand, showcases the shadow side of this placement. Big emotions, big declarations, and at times excessive indulgence. His highly publicized highs and lows really illustrate how this aspect can lead to emotional and behavioral excess if not grounded in self-awareness. He has often swung between states of grandiosity and collapse, highlighting the difficulty of balancing Jupiter's expansion with the moon's need for stability. George Lucas, the visionary behind Star Wars, also has this aspect, and it's easy to see how it played a role in shaping his work. Star Wars is, at its core, a story of emotional intensity and grand adventure, filled with mythological themes that stretch across time and space. Lucas's ability to channel deeply personal emotions into an expansive universal narrative really reflects the Moon-Jupiter dynamic, making feelings larger than life, turning personal experience into something vast and archetypal. Ultimately, people with this aspect must learn to navigate their emotional landscapes with greater awareness. The key is not to shrink their emotions or to limit their enthusiasm, but to find steadfastness within expansion. Emotional fulfillment isn't always found in the next big adventure, the next grand gesture, or the next sweeping experience. It can also be cultivated in quiet moments, in deeper reflection, and learning when to pause before reacting. So, natives with this aspect in their natal chart bring an infectious warmth to the world. They remind others that emotions are meant to be felt and that life is meant to be experienced fully. And that optimism, when it's balanced with self-awareness, it's one of the greatest gifts a person can offer the world. Learning to embrace both the highs and the stillness in between is where true emotional wisdom truly lies. The real challenge of the moon opposite Jupiter lies in learning to regulate emotional intensity without suppressing the natural enthusiasm and warmth that comes with it. Working with this opposition means recognizing when emotions are being inflated beyond their true scale. Not every impulse requires an immediate action, and not every feeling needs external validation all the time. So, developing self-awareness through journaling, grounding techniques, or simply pausing before reacting can really help prevent emotional excess from leading to unnecessary risks or burnout. Learning to appreciate life's abundance without overextending, whether that is financially, emotionally, or energetically, truly is key as well. This aspect thrives when optimism is paired with perspective, allowing for joy without reckless expansion and generosity without self-sacrifice. So finding stability within will really helps prevent the constant search for more actually leading to less. Balancing this aspect means cultivating both gratitude and discernment, appreciating what already exists instead of constantly seeking more excitement, more validation, more expansion, really helps prevent the endless cycle of highs and lows. It's truly about learning to trust that stability isn't stagnation and that joy can truly exist in the quiet moments, not just in the grand gestures or dramatic swings of life. Mastering Moon opposite Jupiter is a bit like trying to find the sweet spot between an all-you-can-eat buffet and a well-balanced meal. The temptation is to go all in on whatever emotion, whatever idea or impulse is currently lighting up the brain like a neon sign. Everything feels urgent. Every feeling is either a cosmic revelation or a tragic downfall. And if left unchecked, then this aspect has the potential to turn life into a series of dramatic overcorrections. First sprinting towards something with a wide-eyed enthusiasm, and then slamming on the brakes when reality fails to match the fantasy. The trick isn't to kill the enthusiasm, but to temper it with a little self-awareness. Not every brilliant idea at 2 a.m. is worth acting on, and not every emotional high or low is a permanent state of being. Learning to pause just for a moment before making any sort of grand declaration or risky decision or unnecessary purchase is a skill worth developing in this lifetime. This aspect also has a way of making everything feel like a moral dilemma. So, you give too much and then suddenly there's nothing left. Hold back and the guilt kicks in like a unrelentless life coach. The thing is, generosity is only sustainable when it's paired with boundaries. So it is entirely possible to be kind and to also have limits, to be open and to be selective, to be expansive without, the emotional or financial bankruptcy that comes with it. And speaking of finances, Moon opposite Jupiter has been known to enable impressive spending habits, often under the justification of treat yourself or investing in the future or, this limited edition purchase will heal my inner child. A little caution, needless to say, goes a long way here, especially when emotions are in the driver's seat. If the urge to buy something or make a grand gesture arises in the middle of an emotional high or low, waiting at least 24 hours before taking action can be all the difference between a wise decision and an expensive regret. Another important lesson: not everything requires a bigger response. This aspect loves expansion, escalation, and more. But sometimes the best answer isn't to do more. It's to sit with what's already there. Instead of constantly seeking new experiences, new emotional highs, or new ways to prove something to others, there's value in appreciating what already exists. The ability to find meaning and fulfillment in the quiet moments, not just the grand dramatic ones, is what brings long-term emotional stability. Balance isn't boring, it's what allows the highs to be enjoyed without the lows becoming unbearable. So, in summary, breathe before reacting if you have this aspect in your chart. Don't make major decisions at the peak of an emotional surge. And set some boundaries without guilt. And maybe sleep on that online shopping cart before purchasing. Moon opposite Jupiter brings a deep well of emotional wisdom and generosity and vision when it is channeled effectively. It's just a matter of making sure that vision is grounded enough to build something real. Instead of chasing every feeling, like a golden ticket on to the next adventure.